That email notification changed everything. I stared at my laptop screen, blinking in disbelief at the confirmation of my $25,000 bonus. 3 years of brutal hours, strategic career moves, and more personal sacrifices than I care to remember had finally paid off. My phone buzzed, my mother's face lighting up the screen, probably about Rebecca's latest drama. I silenced it. For once, my sister's constant crisis wouldn't derail my moment. I'd earned this. My fingers moved over the keyboard, searching for luxury accommodations along the Amalfi Coast. My parents' 35th anniversary was coming up, and for once, I'd be the one creating a memory they'd never forget. 3 hours later, I arrived at my parents' house clutching a ceramic dish of scalloped potatoes, my mom's favorite. The dining room looked exactly as it always had. Faded floral wallpaper, the same oak table with its scratched surface, and framed family photos that gradually showed less of me and more of Rebecca as the years passed. "There she is," Mom called out, rushing to take the dish from my hands. "Just in time, your father's starving." Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "Hey, kiddo." I took my usual seat, the one with the wobbly leg. "I closed the Harrington account today. The client doubled their initial investment." "That's nice, honey," Mom said, distracted by the potatoes. "Is this the recipe I gave you?" Dad folded his newspaper. "Those big corporations are all the same, just money-hungry vultures." Before I could respond, the front door slammed open. Rebecca burst in like a hurricane in designer jeans, her eyes red and mascara smudged. "My car broke down again," she announced, tossing her purse onto the counter. "The mechanic says it'll be $2,000 to fix the transmission." And just like that, all attention shifted. Mom rushed to get Rebecca a plate while Dad asked for details about the car. I sat quietly, pushing potatoes around my plate, wondering if they'd even notice if I disappeared. As Mom served dessert, homemade apple pie for Rebecca, who needed cheering up, I cleared my throat. "I have an announcement," I said, pulling out my tablet. "For your anniversary next month, I'm taking you both to Italy." Silence fell over the table. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. "Italy," she whispered, "like the actual Italy." I nodded, turning my tablet to show them the itinerary I'd planned. 10 days, Rome, Tuscany, and ending in Venice. 5-star accommodations, private tour of the Vatican, wine tasting in Chianti, gondola rides, everything. Dad's eyes glistened with unexpected tears. "Ellie, this is too much." "You've both worked so hard your whole lives," I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. "It's time someone did something special for you." Mom came around the table to hug me, sobbing into my shoulder. Dad joined us, his hand trembling slightly as he patted my back. Rebecca's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Wow, sis, must be nice to have money to throw around like that." I ignored her, savoring the rare feeling of being the center of my parents' gratitude. "Everything's booked and paid for," I continued. "We leave in 3 weeks." Rebecca's expression shifted from jealousy to calculation. "Italy, huh? You know, I've been following some amazing travel influencers. I could help with planning some Instagram-worthy experiences." "It's all booked," I repeated firmly. "Every detail." Mom looked between us, her brow furrowing. "Oh, but honey, Rebecca has such a good eye for these things. Maybe let her help with some suggestions." Dad nodded. "Your sister could probably find some local spots that aren't in the guidebooks." I felt my jaw tighten but forced a smile. "We'll see." During dessert, I noticed Rebecca photographing my itinerary with her phone. Later, as I was helping Mom with dishes, I overheard her in the hallway. "You'll never believe where we're going," she was saying to someone on the phone. "Italy, the Amalfi Coast, Rome, Venice. I know, right? I'll send you the details." Wait. A chill ran down my spine, but I brushed it off. Rebecca's tendency to insert herself into things wasn't new. This was my gift, my trip. Nothing could change that. I was dead wrong. 3 days later, a notification popped up on my phone that made my stomach drop. "Confirmation of your cancellation. Hotel Belvedere, Amalfi Coast." I hadn't canceled anything. My fingers trembled as I called the hotel, only to confirm that yes, my reservation had been canceled earlier that day. Before I could process what was happening, Rebecca breezed through my apartment door using the spare key I'd given my parents for emergencies. "I found us something better," she announced, flopping onto my couch. "You're welcome." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "And how did you get into my apartment?" She rolled her eyes. "Mom gave me the key, obviously." She pulled out her phone. "Check this out, I found this incredible villa overlooking the sea. Private chef, dedicated concierge, infinity pool. It's going to be epic." "Rebecca," I said slowly, "I already had everything booked." "That boring hotel," she waved dismissively. "Trust me, this is way better. The pictures will be insane." Ice formed in my veins. Pictures. For Instagram, duh. She swiped through images of an ostentatious villa that looked like something from a reality show. "The lighting is perfect for golden hour shoots." I took a deep breath. "How exactly did you cancel my reservation?" Her smile turned slightly sheepish. "I might have borrowed your laptop when I was at your place yesterday." "You were at my—" "Your password is Mom's birthday," she interrupted with a shrug. "So predictable." The realization hit me like a brick. I lunged for my laptop, logging into my email to find dozens of confirmation emails, cancellations of my carefully planned reservations, and new bookings I didn't recognize. "What have you done?" I whispered, scrolling through the damage. Rebecca's face hardened slightly. "Made everything better. You should be thanking me." "This villa costs," I gasped when I saw the price. "That's an $8,000 increase." "Don't be so stingy," she said, examining her manicure. "It's for Mom and Dad's anniversary." My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Family meeting tonight, our house, 7 p.m. When I arrived at my parents' house that evening, Rebecca's car was already in the driveway. I found the three of them in the living room, my parents sitting on the couch while Rebecca perched on the armrest beside Mom. "Ellie," Mom began, her voice carrying that familiar note of disappointment. "Rebecca told us you're being difficult about the changes to the trip." I stared at them in disbelief. "She hacked into my accounts and canceled all of my reservations." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Now, honey, hacked is a strong word. She was just trying to help." "Help," I repeated, my voice rising. "By spending thousands more of my money without permission." Rebecca's lip quivered perfectly on cue. "I just wanted to make the trip special. You're being so controlling." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. The responsible daughter is expected to provide. The favorite daughter gets to decide how it's spent. That night, I discovered Rebecca's Instagram post, a collage of photos from the new villa's website with the caption, "So excited to surprise my parents with this dream Italy trip, airplane." I was tagged as my assistant in planning this gift face blowing a kiss. Over the next week, the notifications kept coming. "Your reservation at Ristorante La Pergola has been canceled." "Your Tuscany vineyard tour has been canceled." "Your Vatican private tour has been canceled." Each one replaced with something Rebecca preferred: luxury shopping experiences, photo shoots with professional photographers, spa days at places frequented by celebrities. I tried to fight back, changing my passwords and revering some of the changes, only to find them altered again within hours. Somehow, she still had access. Then came the final blow. "Your flight to Rome has been canceled." My phone rang immediately after, Dad's number. "We need to talk about your attitude," he said without preamble. "Be at our house in an hour." I walked into my parents' living room to find all three of them waiting with that carefully orchestrated look of concern on their faces. The same expression they'd worn when they'd staged an intervention for my unhealthy work habits last Christmas. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already knew. Rebecca spoke first, her voice gentle as if addressing a child. "We think it's best if you don't come to Italy." The words hung in the air. "You want to uninvite me," I said slowly, "from a trip that I'm paying for." Mom sighed. Honey, you've been so stressed lately, so controlling about every little detail. Rebecca has put together a beautiful itinerary, Dad added. But you fight her on everything. I told you this trip was my gift, I said, my voice shaking. My gift to you, that I'm paying for. Rebecca reached out to pat my hand. And we appreciate that so much, but maybe what you really need is some time to yourself to relax. We'll bring you back something nice. The three of them looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to acquiesce as I always had, to apologize for being difficult, to hand over my credit card with a smile and thank them for letting me off the hook. Something inside me snapped. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and spoke with a calmness I didn't know I possessed. Let me make sure I understand, I said, pulling out my phone. I spend $25,000 on a gift for you both. Rebecca crashes the trip, changes everything without my permission, and now you're telling me I can't come. Mom's expression softened into pity. Oh, sweetie, we know you mean well. You know what? I interrupted, opening my browser. You're right, I won't be joining you. I navigated to the airline website and logged in. What are you doing? Rebecca asked, suddenly alert. Canceling your flight, I replied, not looking up. Rebecca jumped to her feet. You can't do that. I just did. I showed her the confirmation screen. And I'm about to cancel Mom and Dad's too, unless they decide right now whether they're going to Italy with me on my terms or staying here with you. Ellie, Mom gasped, that's not fair. Neither is this, I replied, my finger hovering over the cancel flight button for their tickets. I paid for this trip, it's my gift. Anyone who wants to stay behind with Rebecca, I'll cancel your ticket too. Your choice. Rebecca turned to our parents, tears already forming. Are you going to let her do this? Dad looked torn, but Mom's face hardened. Ellie, you're being vindictive. No, I said firmly. I'm finally setting boundaries. I'm leaving for the airport in 3 weeks. You're welcome to join me on the trip I planned, or not. I walked out, closing the door behind me with a soft click rather than the slam I wanted. As I drove away, a strange feeling washed over me, not guilt or anger, but something lighter. Freedom. For the next 3 weeks, I received a barrage of texts and calls. Rebecca's tearful accusations, Mom's attempts at guilt-tripping, Dad's awkward pleas for compromise. I responded to none of them. The morning of the trip, I sat at my gate, watching the minutes tick by. The flight would board in 20 minutes, and I was still alone. Then I saw them, Mom and Dad wheeling their overpacked luggage toward me, looking sheepish and exhausted. We're sorry we're late, Mom said, avoiding my eyes. Traffic was terrible. Dad cleared his throat. Your sister isn't speaking to any of us now. I figured, I replied. Mom's face crumpled with worry. I hope she'll be okay alone for 10 days. I said nothing, simply handing them their boarding passes. As our plane lifted off American soil, I felt a weight lifting too. The change didn't happen all at once. On the first day in Rome, Mom checked her phone constantly for messages from Rebecca. Dad asked twice if I'd contacted her. But by the 3rd day, something shifted. As we walked through the Colosseum, Dad asked me questions about my job, real questions, not the perfunctory inquiries that usually preceded a story about Rebecca's latest achievement. So you manage portfolios for high-net-worth clients? He asked, genuinely interested. That sounds complicated. I found myself explaining investment strategies as we strolled through ancient ruins, surprised by his attentive nods and follow-up questions. On the flight to Florence, Mom fell asleep against the window, her face relaxed. First time she's slept on a plane, ever, Dad whispered, looking at her with tender concern. Usually too worried about your sister to close her eyes. That evening, in our Tuscan villa overlooking rolling vineyards, I realized something profound. Rebecca's absence changed everything. The constant undercurrent of tension was gone. No one was performing for Instagram. No one was manufacturing drama. We were just being. At dinner in a small family-owned trattoria, we lingered over pasta and wine. No one took photos of the food. No one complained about the lack of gluten-free options. We simply ate and talked and laughed. "I forgot how nice this is," Mom said, smiling at me over her glass of Chianti. "Just eating and talking." Dad laughed, a deep, genuine sound I barely recognized. "Remember that little restaurant in Big Sur before the girls were born, where we sat for 3 hours talking?" They reminisced about trips they'd taken before Rebecca, and I came along, adventures I'd never heard about. For the first time, I saw them as people with histories and dreams beyond their roles as our parents. On our 6th day, Rebecca made her move. My phone exploded with notifications. Rebecca had launched a full social media campaign portraying herself as the victim, abandoned by my family on what was supposed to be our special trip. I silenced my phone and enjoyed our private tour of the Uffizi Gallery. That night at 3 a.m., the hotel room phone rang. Mom answered, then sat bolt upright. "What hospital, Rebecca? We'll call them directly." I could hear my sisters wailing through the receiver, something about severe stomach pains and being all alone. Dad took the phone. "We'll talk when we get back," he said firmly, then hung up. Mom looked at him in shock. "She's fine," he said, returning to bed. "She's always fine." The next morning, neither of them mentioned the call. We boarded a train to Venice, and I watched my parents gradually relax into a version of themselves I'd never seen before, playful, curious, unburdened. On our final night in Venice, as we dined on a terrace overlooking the Grand Canal, my work phone chimed with an email. Normally, I wouldn't check during dinner, but something made me glance down. Subject: concerning behavior and professional misconduct. My blood ran cold. I returned to work 3 days later to find my department in chaos. "Thank God you're back," my assistant whispered, ushering me into my office. "The emails." Apparently, while I was in Italy, inappropriate emails had been sent to several of my clients from my work account. Emails questioning the firm's investment strategies, suggesting clients should reconsider their portfolios, even a few with thinly veiled insults. "We knew it couldn't be you," my boss assured me during an emergency meeting. "The timing didn't align with your movements in Italy." Our IT department traced the login to my parents' home address, during hours when I was verifiably touring the Vatican. Security footage from the building showed Rebecca entering the office using my key card, which I'd left with my parents in case of emergency. As the investigation deepened, it discovered keylogging software installed on my laptop, the one Rebecca had borrowed before the trip. "We've documented this as identity theft," HR informed me grimly. "This is criminal behavior, Ellie." I returned home that evening to find Rebecca sitting on the floor outside my apartment door. "You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding," she demanded, jumping to her feet. "That I had permission to use your accounts." I stared at her, seeing her clearly perhaps for the first time. "You tried to destroy my career." "Don't be so dramatic," she scoffed. "I was just trying to teach you a lesson about excluding family." I unlocked my door, planning to shut it in her face, but she pushed past me. "You don't understand what it's like," she shouted, her face contorting. "You've always had everything handed to you. The grades, the scholarships, the fancy job. I deserve what you have." A knock at the door interrupted her tirade. Mom and Dad stood in the hallway, looking grim. "We let ourselves in downstairs when someone was leaving," Dad explained. "We've been trying to reach both of you." Rebecca immediately adopted her victim pose. "Ellie's trying to get me arrested over nothing." "Nothing," I repeated incredulously. "You committed identity theft. You tried to sabotage my career." "It's not fair," Rebecca screamed, her composure finally cracking completely. "Mom and Dad always loved you more, even though they never showed it. You were the responsible one, the smart one. Italy was supposed to be my trip." She lunged at me then, nails aiming for my face. To my shock, Dad stepped between us, physically restraining her for the first time in either of our lives. "That's enough," he said, his voice firm but sad. Rebecca went limp in his grip, sobbing. What happened next surprised me more than anything that had come before. instead of the usual pattern, Rebecca's tantrum, followed by everyone comforting her and me apologizing for provoking her, my parents stood firm. "This isn't Ellie's problem to fix," Dad said, still holding Rebecca's arm. "What you did was wrong, on every level." Mom's face was pale but resolved. "We won't be bailing you out this time." "But they'll press charges," Rebecca wailed. "Then you'll face the consequences," Mom replied, her voice shaking but determined. "We enabled this behavior for too long." They led her toward the door, Rebecca still protesting. At the threshold, Dad turned back and handed me my spare key. "Italy opened our eyes," he said quietly. 3 months later, we established a new ritual, Sunday brunch at a quiet cafe halfway between my apartment and my parents' house. Rebecca's name came up less and less. "Your sisters started selling some kind of wellness supplements," Mom mentioned one Sunday, her tone almost casual. "Direct marketing through her Instagram." Dad grunted, focused on his Eggs Benedict. "Dr. Levine says that's typical, looking for quick success without real work." The mention of Dr. Levine, their family therapist, no longer surprised me. They'd been seeing her weekly since our return. At Christmas, we took a photo, just the 3 of us for the holiday card. We looked slightly awkward but genuinely happy. In February, Mom's phone rang during dinner. She glanced at the unknown number, hesitated, then answered, putting it on speaker. "Mom," Rebecca's weak voice came through. "The doctors found something. I need to come home." I tensed, waiting for the familiar pattern to reassert itself. Mom's reply was calm. "Which hospital, Rebecca? We'll call them directly." A pause. "It's complicated, can't you just—" Dad leaned toward the phone. "When you have actual medical documentation, call us." He ended the call, and we returned to our meal. Spring brought changes. Dad's doctor reduced his blood pressure medication. Mom started taking watercolor classes she'd talked about for years. I mentioned I was dating someone new, and neither of them asked if Rebecca would approve. Last week, I received notification of another bonus, smaller than last year's, but still substantial. I booked a solo trip to Greece. As my plane taxied down the runway, a notification appeared. Rebecca had rebranded herself as a wellness coach and healing specialist, offering courses on family trauma recovery at $499 per session. I didn't block her account. I simply closed the app, leaned back, and watched through the window as the plane banked east, toward my chosen destination. Unburdened, uncompromised, finally free.